some of us that started podcast after you guys, that's what helps too, is you're like researching that coach. Like I think it was Coach Holler was one of them. I listened to it, got to talk to him, and I was like, had an idea of what I was going to talk about because I just do this by the seat of my pants. Like I used to write it down, like the questions, but I was like, screw it. We're going to go by the seat of our pants. And so sometimes that's where your guys' comes in. And of course,
That's
I'm an O-line coach. So when it says power, I have to watch it, right? Or listen.
dang right. I mean, that was always kind of the premise for us too. Bring people on who we wanted to learn from, but usually it was always going to kind of come back to we wanted to bring offensive line, run game, pass protection, things like that, obviously, and of course gap scheme. I don't think there's an offensive line coach out there that doesn't like gap scheme, and if they don't, they probably don't admit it to any other offensive line coaches. But yeah, hey, Coach Holler, it was always kind of funny that was the first football podcast that he ever did.
Okay.
And we'd obviously read his articles, and he wanted to bash on the some of the old school coaches and the
Mm-hmm.
conditioning and things like that. So it was fun to bring him on, but he'll still tell you to this day, yeah, Run the Power. That was the first football podcast he did, and it kind of, I would say he'd obviously been introduced in the football world, but maybe brought him maybe a little bit more mainstream, and now he's a huge celebrity. We're just lucky to know old Coach Holler. He's a stud.
Oh yeah, he lives like he told me where he lived. He lives like 15 minutes away from me, which is crazy. He lives right down the street, like
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes. He coaches at a high school that at a school that I coached at, played basketball against. And so they all adopted that Feed the Cats. And we always wondered, why is the team so fast? And then I was like, well, because of this guy that's in the building. This is why they're fast, because they have adopted it. And then, like you said, he's a celebrity now. He's all over the place. He does the Glacier clinics for football, and he's out there.
Mm-hmm.
That was the same thing. He explained everything. I learned it a while back, and I'm like, none of this makes sense because I had the old school thinking. Like, what do you mean you're not hitting all the time? And what do you mean you're not doing gassers or running or doing these things? And my buddy was doing it, another buddy was doing it. And then none of it made sense. Then finally it clicked, talked to Coach Holler, and then it clicked even more. And I'm like, this makes a lot of sense, what you're saying. And now the old schoolness is like leaving my body now. I'm like, because I did in football this year, like my lineman, this was the least amount of hitting I've ever done. And I was like cringing, but we stayed healthy all year for once. So I was like, maybe there's something to his way of doing it.
It really resonated with us. So I know we did the podcast, and then um obviously you'd be able to exchange numbers, and you're able to kind of bounce ideas off of him. And then I was coaching track at the time, and our head track coach Nick Nelson had adopted a lot of the philosophies that track season, and since then, I mean, Ankeny has really taken off. I mean, you could ask anyone. Again, it's a combination of factors, but we needed to go to that because we had a class coming through. They played so many sports,
Right.
so it was almost impossible. I mean, if we were going to have to share athletes, and guys are playing three sports, especially in our league, the CIML league in Iowa. I mean, everyone will tell you. I mean, it's a meat grinder. There's
Right.
eight teams, and all of them are going to be good. I think this year when they did have the final eight teams in the football playoffs, six of them are in the CIML. So I mean, it's just a hotbed for talent in football. But it was something we had to do out of necessity. Otherwise, our best guys were going to be hurt.
Uh-huh.
They weren't going to be able to go out. They had other primary sports. We had D1 wrestlers, we had D1 baseball players, and we needed those guys to play football. So I think switching over to that, and then we've just been able to kind of tweak it and modify it throughout. But the overall premise has always been the same. We want our kids to be fast and fresh. We want our kids to be playing the best on whether it's a Friday night or hey, Friday nights in November when the playoffs do hit. And we've now got 4 or 5 years of data that all back it up. We still have kids getting faster during the season.
Mhm.
We've taken our track program. We were barely scoring at the state meets when I was there. I mean, we still had some good kids and things like that, but now we get a third place. Last year we were second place, and I think we're going to have as good a shot as anybody at winning the state track meet this year because we've built our track program on sprinters. We've
Right.
got more sprinters and more speed than we ever have, and all of a sudden now that stuff shows up. Hey, your defense is faster, your special teams are faster. You have younger athletes who are able to contribute earlier because they can run and they can play at that level. I just feel like there's so many positives to it, and at the same time, our kids are happy and healthy. We don't ever condition. We haven't conditioned in 5 years,
Mhm.
and everybody will tell you. My wife, she doesn't know the most about football, but she's always telling me, "You guys are a second half team. You're always a second half team." And I think a lot of that has to do with that mentality of, "Hey, we're going to be fresh. We're going to
Right.
be, explosive in the fourth quarter," and that's helped us win a lot of games late because we've adopted this and we don't grind our guys down. What a
Right.
what a novel concept, right?
Oh, I know, because like I said, my buddy did it years ago, and I remember him saying, like, Steve, if you watch he coached girls track. He goes, if you watch it, you'll think we're the laziest people you've ever met.
Mhm.
And I'm like, what do you mean? We run and then we sit for 5 minutes and we do nothing for 5 minutes. Then we get up and run again and do whatever. And he goes, my practices are cut in half. I don't have to be out there all day. And it never clicked with me. I talked to Coach Dixon during COVID, and he explained things to me. Some of it clicked, some of it didn't. I just couldn't wrap my mind around, like, what do you mean you don't put pads on till Wednesday? What do you mean you're only running 10 plays of defense? Like, none of this is resonating with me. It doesn't feel right. And then when I talked to Coach Holler, he just said, you're going to be uncomfortable when you decide to make that switch of, like,
Mhm.
just think about it. Like, what do up downs do for you? Like, when you play, did they do anything for you? And I was like, well, it makes you in shape. He goes, no, it doesn't. And all of a sudden, it just clicked. So when I went to my head coach, he played linebacker at North Central. And so he has that linebacker mentality. And so I explained it to him. He goes, nope, nope. And then as we went on, he's like, all right, some of this makes sense because, like, we don't two platoon. We have to practice offense and defense in one day. So I
Yep.
had to look at what the D line was doing because my O line, we're going to go practice D line later on in the day. Are you hitting a lot today? And he might be like, oh, yeah, we're doing whatever. And I said, okay, an individual, I'm not hitting today then. What do you mean you're not hitting? I was like, we're going to hit bags. Well,
Mhm.
why? And I said, because think about it, coach. We're individual. If I have them hit one on one, whatever it is, do inside run, do team offense, turn around and go do defensive line stuff that's hitting, maybe play some scout team too and hit. They're going to get worn out by Friday. So I'm going to scale it back. And my old line, I remember week 2 or 3, they were like, Coach, we feel fresh still. And I'm like, okay, maybe there is something to this where you're bottled up and you want to go hit people on Friday night instead of me killing you all week. It's crazy.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you want your kids. I mean, yes, we have to have them prepared, but there's really no substitute for them feeling really, really good on Friday.
Mhm. Right.
They're gonna play way better on Friday as opposed to, hey, man, I feel really good. We had 20 reps of inside run and we hammered them. I mean, you might feel good as a coach, but the kids, if they're not going to be able to play full speed on a Friday night, it's literally going to be a counterproductive thing. And then you talk about, obviously, late in the season, all those things accumulate. You've only got
Right.
so many hits in your shoulders.
Right.
We're having to deal with that a little bit. I think we've had some kids with some labrums and things like that. So I know we're even looking to modify things a little bit how we want to even practice with some of our bigger athletes. So it's a constant battle. But I know this, on Friday nights, we usually have our best dudes out there, and when you
Right.
put your best dudes on the field, you're always going to have a chance.
Right. Yeah. Because we made the playoffs for the first time since 2014, and we started to think, like, well, how did this happen? And obviously, it's the kids that finally bought in. But we realized there was less injuries. There was a couple
Mhm.
teams that had more players than us, but we just kind of wore them down. Like, even though they had more players, they just kept their best guys on the field, and we just kind of wore them down a little bit. And we were like, okay, maybe there is something to what we were changing a little bit. So I know maybe this year we're going to even go even more further into what Coach Holler does, because the head coach was like, maybe Steve, maybe there is something that you were trying to bring here when you were talking to him. So, and I'm like, and guess what, coach? We live in the suburbs. He's in the suburbs. We can go grab him. Other people don't have that opportunity. We could ask him to take 10 minutes to talk to us, like it's not that hard. And so we'll see, but it is a crazy concept from when we all played. Like, it's still uncomfortable to me to be like, I want to do one-on-ones, or I want to do this, I want to do this. And I'm like, Steve, old schoolness, like we don't need to do it no more. Like the running for punishment, even I don't even do that anymore. I'm like, but it's uncomfortable still. And I think it'll forever be uncomfortable, but you know, we always have to think about when we did it and how did we like it? We hated it. I hated it. That's why I
Yeah.
hate running to this day. I don't want to go run because it was punishment all the time, all the time.
Yeah. I just think, yeah, I mean, anytime you do something new, you said it, Coach Holler said it. I mean, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but to me, that's the only way we grow. I mean,
Right.
if we're not feeling uncomfortable and all we're doing is just staying in our comfort zone, we're going to get the same results.
Right.
No matter what, you have to step outside your comfort zone. You have to try new things. You have to experiment with things. We'll sit here and talk about things all off season that we want to do offensively, and who knows, they might be good, they might not be good, but we at least got to try them.
Right.
And I think you got to have that learning mentality nonstop. Otherwise, I don't think you're ever going to consistently get better. Right? People are going to continue to adapt. People are continue to get better. Just because I did it and it was successful at one point in my life doesn't mean that's going to necessarily work now, or necessarily mean that there's a better way to do it. So I think that's what I'm most excited about. We've had this new staff, we have a new coach right now, and I feel like there's just so many new ideas that are
Mhm.
coming to Ankeny. I kind of liken it back to when we first met with Coach Holler. So I think I'm hoping we can take it to another level, but you have to be surrounded, I think, by an atmosphere and group of people who want to get better and don't just want to sit there and say, you know what, well, we didn't do that in 1988. Well, you know what? The game's changed a little bit now too, and people change, and there's new technology and new ideas that I think you consistently have to have your eyes and ears open to those things. Otherwise, the game passes you by.
Yeah. Our strength coach, we got him 2 years ago. He interned at Northwestern, and we got to go watch a practice 2 years ago. And then I realized, oh, we're doing the same warm ups that they do, which is the old school flex of like getting lines. We're going to do this down the lines and stuff. And so this year I was like, how stupid is this flex period? And we just kept doing it. And well, Northwestern did it. And I was like, yeah. And they're one of the slowest teams. No offense to any of them, but if you looked at the Big Ten for the past 2 years before that, I was like, if you look at it, they got worn out by the year when it was over. And so I just kept saying, how stupid is this? How stupid is this? We're getting tired. Why can't we go individual groups and do some type of offensive line thing or quarterback thing? And that's our warm up, And I made that comment. I was like, I did this in 2004. Like, why do we have to keep doing this? Let's change it up a little bit. And it's because that's all the kid knew. I mean, he's way younger than me. He's like, that's what I know. And I'm like, you'll learn. We don't need to do this no more. And I want to say the Northwestern thing 2 years ago, never saw anything that was reported. I just want people to know that. Never saw it.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten rid of team flex. We don't do any of that stuff either. We've got 2 speed days that we do during the week, and those are, I mean, it's all the wake up drills and speed drills. We,
Yep.
we focus more on max speed just because I feel like football is so acceleration driven.
Yep.
We see our kids doing enough acceleration stops and starts by just playing the game of football that we don't spend a ton of time with that.
Yep.
So it's all max speed driven because max speed is what goes fastest. It
Mhm.
leaves the fastest. So if you're not consistently watering it, doing it on a weekly basis, obviously it's going to go away. But for us, dude, it's 10 minutes.
Mhm.
We'll either time them on a Sunday or a Monday. Our kids know exactly if they're getting faster or not. If they feel like crap from the week before on a Friday, our kids know. They just, hey, I'm not running today, Coach Walz, and nobody says anything to them other than maybe asking a couple questions. Hey, what's hurt? Have you gone in to see Grant, our trainer, who does a phenomenal job as well communicating it? But it just lets everyone know where they're at, and then your developmental players, the guys that are fresh or the guys that haven't played, maybe just a little bit of JV and stuff like that, they're getting faster. It's a
Yep.
it's a it's really good speed development thing. And then the next thing we'll do is either a Wednesday or Thursday. We kind of alternate which day we do it. We'd run wickets. And again, we're not killing them. We're not going to run 8 wickets or 8 sets of it. It's 2 or 3,
Mhm.
and get those guys going. And then we'd have maybe a different thought process. I'd go a little bit longer over with our skill kids or faster kids. So maybe it was a 7 foot wicket,
Mhm.
7.5 every now and again we'd get going. And then with some of our linemen or guys that maybe aren't as flexible, guys a little bit shorter, it'd just be 6 feet. We go every 2 yards. And then other days we'd say, hey, I want to work on, turnover. So I'd make them really, really short, and they'd go maybe 3 or 4 of them, but it's going to be a shorter wicket, and it'd just be a focus on, hey, turn it over, working cycles. So getting their full leg cycle going correctly and quickly. But that's literally all we would have to do with that stuff. And then, like you're saying, hey, why go through a whole team flex period? We wouldn't on those other days. The other days, it's all just football related.
Yep.
Hey, we're going to go straight into individual, or maybe it was a 5-minute correction period really fast.
Yep.
Where we'd fix a few things, and it's like, all right, now we're into Indy. Take your centers, your QBs, your running backs. We just call it exchange period. Hey guys, it's 5 minutes warm up. QBs call the run play. They hand off to the running back. You pump fake your RPOs. The centers are doing their footwork. We get an extra 25, 30 snaps every single day, and everyone else is over in Indy. So, I mean, there's ways you can get around it where you're, quote, warming up that are actually getting you better at football.
Right.
Is what we legitimately say. Those 10 to 15 reps that you're getting during that 10-minute period, those things add up over the course of a season. I mean, if that's what you're doing 3 days a week, that's 30 more reps.
Yep.
10 weeks, that's 300 more reps of whatever it is we're trying to get better at, instead of me doing a walking knee hug and me doing a stretch and me doing jumping jacks. So I just feel like those things accumulate over time to where we don't have to, worry about those things, because our coaches are taking care of it by doing something football related to get those guys warmed up.
Right. We did that a couple of times where for some reason we didn't do flex. And so I said, okay, O-line, yesterday we struggled in pass protection. So we're going to go over and work on stuff. To me, I was like, we're working everything right now, hips, feet, ankles, and we're not going 100%. It was, hey, we're going to just make sure we're getting the right placement. Maybe there was a time where, hey, our inside zone steps look terrible. So we're going to go over there and just go through the steps. And we're moving. And, I know the warming up thing isn't a thing anymore, but we're moving. They're moving around.
Yeah.
Doing that with basketball. Like, I don't do stretches. And the kids are like coming from 8th grade. They're like, well, coach, when do we stretch? I'm like, you don't. What do you mean you don't? I'm like, I give you 15 minutes before practice just to shoot around and you're moving and stuff, right? There you go. And it's not processing with them. And like, what do we do before a game to warm up? I'm like, well, you're going to do shooting. You're just going to go around and shoot. What do you mean? You're moving around. I don't need you to do something where you're tired. Well, coach, we got 30 minutes left. Should I go shoot? I'm like, no, wait till like 15 minutes. What do you mean? Well, I don't want you tired. And so it's just, even with kids, they're getting taught the old school thing that they get to me, and it's going out. Like, they don't have to worry about it anymore. And some parents don't like it. And I'm like, I kind of don't care either. I'm like, you don't have to care.
Yeah.
You don't have to like it.
Yeah. We'd changed like our pregame. It's interesting you talk about, your basketball pregame. We changed what we'd kind of done pregame as well. I mean, we still go out an hour before, but we don't wear pads.
Right.
Yep. Everything we've done when we go out like early with your skill dudes, your kickers, punters, snappers, all of that, and then we have receivers and QBs are out there. Everything was, when it was warm outside, it was t-shirt and shorts. So they have a helmet, t-shirt and shorts. They'd go out and they love it. I mean, the guys are moving freely. They look fast. They're not sweating through all of their, equipment, things like that. So they feel great. And then they would go back in after, about that 20 minutes, take 15 minutes. All right, put your pads on, put your shoulder pads on, get taped up, all the stuff that you needed to do. And then we would go out. It'd be just a brief, indie period. And then we're straight into our team stuff, defensive team. You do those things. I felt like it was way better too. I mean, we had games where you're playing where it's about 100 degrees and they're not, gassed out before they even take a snap, where I feel like, maybe a few teams, you watch them, they're out there in their full uniform, 45 minutes to an hour for the game. They're doing a stretch. You're sitting in the 100-degree heat. And it's like, dude, you guys are going to have issues with, hydration and staying cool just because of the way that you warm up. But again, all that stuff again goes back to the feed the cats mentality. We want you to be obviously ready to perform at an optimal level, but why are we doing these things an hour before, the actual competition? It's ludicrous to me.
I think what Coach Holler told me, it's kind of like a show we would put on. He's like, when you guys go out there and warm up for doing all this stuff and do this, and this, it's like a show. And
Yeah.
maybe it was Coach Dixon, I don't remember. And I'm like, that's true. So like this year, offense will go out and warm up on the game field, not the practice field. And I used to do, you do one-on-ones, you're hitting or whatever. They come to me and I go, hey, just get a partner. They're going to line up head up you, just quick inside zone step, quick wide zone step. So that way, just mentally we're visualizing it and it's very
Yep.
slow. And then we line up and just say, okay, remember this is how they're going to line up. This might how we have to block it. You step to it very quickly. They're not using any energy. I talk to them, they go get water, and then they wait as we're watching everybody else do their stuff. And I remember the first game this year, they're like, Coach, what are you doing? And I'm like, they're gonna stand here and get water and rest. What do you mean? I want their bodies to reset before this game for the O line perspective. Like, I don't want them tired. And the kids loved it. They're like, and two of my kids that have been with me since they were sophomores, now seniors, they didn't understand it at first. They're like, this isn't Coach Steve. We're hitting. We're supposed to do this. We're supposed to do this. I want to do this. And I'm like, good. Go hit the other team. Don't worry about what I'm doing. And this was the healthiest O line I've had since I got to the school. Every year, every game, I never had the same starting O line once in 2.5 years, 3 years. They always got hurt. This year was the first time where every single game, except one or two, I had the same starting lineup the whole time. And I was like, maybe there is something here. At least I'm telling myself that. But I mean, it just people can understand it during the game. Like, why is the O line standing on the sideline? Even I can hear the fans. And I'm like, don't worry about what I'm doing. But like, they're relaxing. They're sitting, they're relaxing, they're resetting their bodies. They just did a D line drill for 10 minutes that had nothing to do with anything. And so they're going to relax for a little bit.
Yeah, they'll be ready to go with Friday. Trust me, they'll be ready to go when the first snap's going. So I mean, yeah, it's just funny. I mean, I think it even bleeds over into their lives. You talk about fans and parents. It bleeds over. They feel like their kid always has to be doing something.
Uh-huh.
Right? It would bother me, of having to talk to kids and parents like, yeah, my dad woke me up at 7 o'clock on the weekends. I'm like, dude, you tell them to quit waking you up early.
Uh-huh.
Sleep in, get your recovery. Sleep is important. Taking naps is important. It's okay. Having to put them in another activity, having to put them in another thing. They always just feel like maybe they're falling behind when it's like you got to find that good balance. I get it. You have to be skillful. You have to be ready to go. You have to be prepared. But at the same time, if it's robbing from, the kids' happiness and health and recovery, to me now that's where it gets to be a problem. I still